Today's guest is Dr. Emily Splichal, a functional podiatrist revealing how your feet might be fueling your stress and burnout. She shares why orthotics may weaken your feet, whether heels are really that bad, and the surprising science of barefoot grounding.
Hi, Dr. Emily. I'm so happy to have you today on the show, and we are going to talk all about feet. How exciting!
It is. Thank you so much for having me on.
I wanted to ask you, how did you first become so interested in feet specifically? I know you were in fitness your whole life.
Yep.
You wanted to study functional medicine, but tell us more, and also please tell us, what does a functional podiatrist does?
Yes. So a podiatrist, just a podiatrist, is a medical doctor that focuses on feet and foot conditions, foot pathology, whereas a functional podiatrist, which is kind of a uniqueness to how I practice, and I'm sure there's a few others out there, but I look at the human body from a very integrated perspective. I actually think about our feet as a way to unlock longevity. So I'm very into longevity, anti-aging, movement longevity, athletic performance. And then I look at the foot from a unique sensory perspective. So not just heavy mechanics, orthotics, supportive shoes. I think more sensory science, brain, barefoot shoes. How do we get into these small muscles of the feet? So very, very, very different way of practicing. To answer your first question, as far as how I got into podiatry and feet, was yes, my background is in fitness. Before that, my background was in gymnastics. I was a competitive gymnast, which is a barefoot sport, very much into how your feet are important to landing and essentially sticking in the land. And then when I was looking at graduate schools, again, this is the not attractive side of it, or not sexy side of how I got into feet initially, was that when I was looking at medical schools and graduate schools, I needed to be able to stay in New York City, which is where I was living at the time, and I needed to be able to stay in fitness. So there was one option, and that was podiatry school. So it was literally by chance. I know, so crazy, so not a exciting way to end up there. But what I did realize, because I did stay within fitness throughout all of my medical training, podiatry training, is I was continuously fed with this integrated concept and approach to movement, where I was always thinking as a fitness professional when I was becoming a young doctor, right? So I was able to kind of start to continue to merge them, question things. What I was taught was initially very isolated in podiatry school, and I was able to go back to my fitness and try to connect it. And then I just kept pushing into it. And then the last most important part of my career is that in 2008, 9, 10, I don't know if you remember the barefoot running boom, minimal shoes, the five-finger shoes, Born to Run book, like that, all of that was just as I was graduating podiatry school, getting into how I wanted to ultimately shape my career. Because of my fitness background, I was able to kind of connect on and own that space, you could say. So I went back to school and I got my master's in human movement, and I focused on barefoot science. And then that is actually the bridge. So I have fitness here, podiatry here, and then the bridge is my master's in human movement with this barefoot science focus. So that is kind of the story.
I love it. And I have to say, Dr. Emily, one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you was, hey, because I know that many of my clients have all kind of food problems, and we're going to talk about that, but so do I. And I've had a series of problematics and challenges. And well, for starter, I was told that I had flat feet. I've been
Mhm.
told that my whole life. I had, the blessing of having very, very caring parents that took me to all kind of doctors and really looked after my health. But I had those like really thick insoles for my whole childhood. And I think it kind of created a little bit of a dysfunction, because as an adult, when I stopped wearing my insoles, I started to feel this lack of balance. And then, of course, as a girl, I started to wear really, really high heels, very, very pointy shoes. You know where I'm going with this, and this is
Yeah.
not going to be sexy, but I have to tell you, I've had a bad luck of bunions and all the rest of it. And then, in case this was not enough, I decided to become an endurance runner.
Oh.
And my feet are not loving me. So this has been my journey, and I would love to hear your thoughts on some of the things that I've just thrown at you. But I'll just say a couple of things that I found help for me was to actually do a bit of barefoot shoes. So I am a huge fan of Five Fingers, and I would love your opinion on those because you'll always catch me walking around that. But I would also love for you to shed some light around heels, because I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with heels. I love
Okay.
them. I am still a Sex and the City type of girl, but I
Me
have to
too.
be honest, Dr. Emily, they hurt me so bad.
I know. Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot in there, but
There
what
is
I
a
would
lot.
say, the initial part of what you had mentioned as far as orthotics and arch supports,
Yes.
there is a time and place for them. I prescribe them or recommend them very selectively or strategically. So there's definitely a reason for them, where what I learned unfortunately in podiatry school is really everyone, right? It's a great upsell product, right? If someone's coming to see you, then if you could sell, a $500 to $1,000 orthotic to every patient, just run the numbers and kind of think about it. Obviously, that's not how I practice, but when I do prescribe orthotics, I always tell my patients that this is not a magic insert. This is all you need to do, and your life is perfect. This plus, I still need you to do your daily foot releases. I still need you to strengthen your feet in addition to using these orthotics. We need to focus on the sensory side of the foot. So I'm giving them the orthotic as part of this overarching program that is actually individualized for the individual. That's very unique. Most people get the orthotic, think that's all they do. They never think about their feet again, and then that's it. And there's actually research studies that show that chronic use of orthotics and supportive shoes can actually cause an atrophy and a weakening of your foot muscles. And the foot muscles specifically that it causes the weakening in are the small ones on the bottom of the foot. These are called intrinsics. This is kind of like your pelvic floor. For the listeners, they can think of the itty bitty muscles as the pelvic floor of your foot, the deep core. And if you start to atrophy those, you lose your ability to maintain optimal balance, to absorb impact forces, to really translate stability from the ground up. So really, really important on that. So that's kind of the orthotic side of it. As far as footwear, minimal footwear, I love minimal footwear. Again, it's appropriate for different foot types. So there are exceptions to every rule. There are certain foot types that should actually not be in them, or don't walk, you know, weekend errands in them. Could you wear them at the gym? Sure. It's a little bit different experience to the foot when you're at the gym versus you're running around New York City in barefoot shoes, right? You want to find the appropriateness based off of your foot type. Now, minimal shoes such as the Five Fingers or Vivo or Zero or any of the other ones, research has actually shown that they can strengthen foot muscles. So that's really good. That could be seen as an advantage, right? But again, it is a little bit of a individuality, progressiveness of how you transition from super supportive shoes to a more minimal shoe. And that, totally happy to talk about that. The third one that you mentioned was high heels, which I love as well. And I love fashion. I mean, I lived in New York City for 20 years, so I'm definitely a Sex and the City girl also. There's a time and place for them, of course. They are not that good for your feet, for your body, for your lower back, for your skeleton, but women are going to wear them, probably some men too, but people are going to wear them. What do you do when you get out of them? How do you maintain proper of posture as you can in a high heel stiletto so that we minimize the amount of stress that we can on the system? And then, as I had said, when you get out of them, what do you do? Right? What do you do to reset the system? I actually had my first workout that I ever launched, workout DVD, was called Catwalk Confidence. And it was a workout for women who wear heels. It was essentially like a vertical Pilates, a barefoot balance foot to core workout for women who wanted to wear heels. And then the second one that kind of came with it was called stiletto recovery. And it was essentially, what do you do as soon as you take your shoes off?
So what I'm hearing, Dr. Emily, is we don't have to throw all our heels in the bin just yet, right? We can keep some.
Yes, no, I'm definitely not throwing away some of my heels too. Those are expensive.
Is there a safe dose? Is there like, would you say like 2 hours, 3 times a week? Like, is there a number that we can sort of gravitate towards in terms of in your experience and with all your knowledge?
Yeah, so what I would say around the stilettos is, if you look at the research, so we're going to keep it research based, is anything over 3 inches, the effect on the system, the skeletal system, meaning the front of the foot, your ankle, your low back, your neck, your shoulders, right? So what it's doing to the rest of your alignment, for every probably half an inch over 3 inches, it dramatically compounds the effect on your system. Meaning, if the listeners did want to say, okay, I want to wear heels, or I have to wear heels for work, or I have events and social and all of that, you could stick with 3 inches and below if that works kind of within you, if you want to follow that. There are certain shapes that would be a little more foot friendly. I personally find that stilettos that are more like a peep toe or an open toe are friendlier to the toes than like a closed pump. And every designer is a little bit different in their last, kind of the shape of it. Louboutin changed theirs a little bit, but theirs used to be a really, really, really steep pitch. And I don't know if you remember like toe cleavage, like they were very into like toe cleavage and just that look and just this sharp pitch and just a little bit of the toes kind of crammed into this. So love Louboutins, own several pairs, but the ones of Louboutins that work for me based off of this is I can only wear their open sandal. So it's just a strap. So I know my toes are not going to be crunched in their design of their last, or one that's a little bit more like a peep toe. So kind of like a peep toe mule. So that's what I would kind of say also is look at how could we find or work with different shapes. Now, you might not be able to have toes exposed for certain reasons with work and corporate and stuff like that, but maybe look at some of the other brands. I do find that Manolos are really friendlier. Jimmy Choo's are really friendly, and some of the YSL. So this is if people are looking at like legit brands, like expensive luxury brands of stilettos, is they all have different lasts. So you literally have to go in and try all of them. And then this is not just for high heel testing, but for all shoes, is you have to walk around. Like you have to be kind of annoying and say, okay, I'm literally going to walk around your store, not for 30 seconds or 10 seconds, but you have to spend a little bit of time in there to get a true perception of how that foot's going to feel in the shoe.
I love that. I love that. And I was wondering if I could ask you about my experience, because one thing that I've noticed is the more I wear my barefoot wear and the more often I wear them, the more painful I find the heels experience. So that was really quite intense for me this week because I was actually on family vacation. And during my vacation, I was walking around in my barefoot wear, wearing them all the time, walking around, going to the beach and just playing in the sand and enjoying this barefoot lifestyle. And then I got back today, actually, put a pair of heels on, and I thought, ouch. So I was wondering, is there something to be said about the more you wear barefoot shoes and the less often you wear heels, the more painful the experience of going back to your heels is going to be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we wear minimal shoes, barefoot shoes, go barefoot, things like that, your foot is actually widening, which might sound like not a good thing. I mean, it's not going to, you know, super dramatically, but even by like a millimeter wider of the foot is actually quite significant when it comes to footwear and trying to get back into stilettos. So a natural shape of a human foot that is optimally stabilized and balanced has what's called metatarsal splay. That's the long bones in the foot. And where the ball of your foot kind of widens, that's actually an important part of a healthy, stable foot. If you have a foot that has this beautiful metatarsal splay, toe splay, and you try to put it back into like a heel, you are now just compressing a lot of the tissue and kind of countering how the body now knows it's able to stabilize and function. So it totally makes sense.
Oh, wow. Now, I also wondered if you have an opinion on wearing tango shoes, even though you're not a tango dancer. And I know this sounds strange, but I was told that because they were designed for dancing, obviously they're made to be relatively comfortable, even though they look quite elegant and they've got a bit of
Mhm.
a heel. So I was told that if I'm really desperate and I don't know where else to look, I should consider tango dancing shoes. And I thought I would run it by you before I go and make that investment.
Yeah, so I think tango shoes would be similar to so I do Latin ballroom. So Latin ballroom shoes would be kind of similar. They're not exactly the same as far as rhythm and Latin dance stilettos or dance shoes, sorry. But what I have found, so I can talk about this as far as what I have found with Latin ballroom shoes because they will be similar.
Right.
The height of the heel is going to be a little bit lower. So it's about 2.5 inches. You could do 2 inches, you could do 2.5. You can find some that actually push a little bit more towards 3 inches. The front of the shoe is going to wrap around the toes, like the front of the foot, but it's going to be a fabric that is designed to stretch. So they're not made of, like plastics and things that a lot of high heels are made of. It's actually designed to spread and open up a little bit. The part of a ballroom shoe that I didn't realize until I started doing ballroom is that the bottom front of it is actually made of like a soft leather. So your foot, as you're in a stiletto like this, you could actually do something like that with your toes. So imagine you're pointing your toes. You can actually pull the front of the stiletto down into a point, if this is making sense, right?
Of course.
Um,
Yes.
so that component of the ballroom shoes is really, really important to how a tango dancer or a ballroom dancer needs to work with the floor. Again, this is literally just learning it from doing ballroom over the last year, is that ballroom and characteristics of ballroom, I actually think everyone should carry into how they walk in high heels, how they walk in minimal shoes. But you're really grounded and you're becoming one with the ground, as cheesy as that sounds, but you are trying to really feel and articulate every aspect of your foot, even through the shoe, with the ground. And through that, you are finding your stability and your ability to kind of transfer energy and to move gracefully. So you could absolutely use tango shoes if you want. Just know they're going to be a little bit shorter than maybe a 5-inch stiletto.
I love that. I'm absolutely doing that then.
Yeah.
I love this. I wanted to ask you about grounding. Now, we see it all over social media, and when I talk to my corporate executives, bankers, lawyers, partners, MD executives at top organization, and I say that they should ground and take off their shoes and spend some time grounding on the earth. I will tell you, Dr. Emily, I being told that it's a bit woo woo, that it sounds like nonsense, that it's some kind of witchcraft, and all of the above. So, can we bring some science? Can we bring some knowledge on grounding? What are your
Yes.
thoughts on it? What is your lived experience? And how can we bring a little bit of, non woo woo sense to something that sounds a bit wacky at first?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And whenever I talk about earthing or grounding, my colleagues are definitely like they give me shit for it. But there is valid science behind earthing. Now, what I will say and what I tell my patients about things like earthing, kind of like red light therapy, which is what I'm really big in, and other alternative holistic modalities, let's call it, is that it is the consistency of a method or a therapeutic approach. In this case, we're talking about earthing. So it's the consistency, right? It's just becomes part of your lifestyle that every day you ground or you earth for 10, 15 minutes, right? It is the accumulation of you doing that consistently as a lifestyle in conjunction to the rest of your healthy lifestyle philosophies, that is what's creating this compounded effect to your overall health and wellness. I just think that's an important part of it, because when we talk about exactly what earthing is, people will say, there is no way that I can just stand on the grass for 15 minutes and I do it for a week and my plantar fasciitis goes away. Like, that's not what we're saying, right? It's much more about this subtle collective compounding effect. So, having said that, I love earthing, and there is a cardiologist in the United States. He actually passed away a couple years ago, and his name, I didn't make this up, his name is Frank Sinatra, Dr. Frank Sinatra, so it's easy to remember. And he was a cardiologist that did a lot of research around earthing. And he would have all of his cardiac patients do this because of what it had as far as an effect on circulation, the effect it had on systemic inflammation, the effect it has on the nervous system, and essentially creating this grounding, not to use the word of what it is, but this grounding of the circadian rhythm. It kind of brings us back to the rhythms of how we need to be. We all need to be literally grounded, not through grounding, but we need to be grounded humans and like anchored to the earth of which we are part of. And there's research behind it. So that's where you can think of it. Now, some easy ways that you could think about grounding that I try to tie it in is, let's say if any of the listeners have like a dog and they are taking the dog to the park, right? Just kind of beep, beep, kick your shoes off as the dog is running around in the park, so you can kind of streamline it. Technically, you can ground on concrete, which is really cool. So I would ground, it sounds gross, but I would ground when I lived in New York City, and I'd be waiting at a red light or a don't walk sign. And I would sit there and I would just take my shoes off. I would do one at a time so I wouldn't look totally crazy. But I would take, and then I would put the foot on the concrete, and I'd have one foot in my sandal, one foot on the concrete. And then when the light switched to be green or to walk again, I would put on my sandal and walk. So you can actually ground through the concrete, which is really cool. Of course, there's grounding mats, there's grounding blankets, there's grounding materials. There's actually a new shoe company that just reached out to me. It's called Grounds, and you can ground in the shoes. So Ground Z with a Z at the end. You can ground with the shoes. This is a insole that has silver in it. So silver and copper are grounding agents. So you can sneak it in a way that it might work easier than saying, I live in an urban environment. How do I stand on grass? I don't have a dog. So where am I going to do this, right? But to me, it's just part of a holistic, healthy lifestyle.
And is there, in your opinion, a hierarchy of grounding? In other words, is grounding in the sand, by the sea, feet in the salt water, or in the grass, in the park, preferable and more beneficial than urban grounding? I understand that you may not have a choice, but is there a hierarchy in terms of top quality grounding, lesser quality grounding?
I mean, for sure, I would say anything that is natural, because if you even say going into nature, going to the beach, going to the grass, not even just from an earthing perspective, but those methods are so important to nervous system regulation and just peace and connection to self, that if you are essentially doing that at the same time as the earthing, then I would say, again, that's kind of theory. I don't know if there's been an actual earthing study saying like, here's urban earthing or grounding versus, nature-based grounding. But I would say if you're getting these extraneous benefits by being a little bit more connected to the natural earth. And we actually don't realize. So in urban environments, like a high rise, like an apartment building. So when I lived in New York, we would have, 25 floors of apartments, and that's all concrete. And the higher that you go, the higher the floor that you live on, the more disconnected. So that the increased EMFs and radio frequency. So the need to ground and anchor is more important for people in an urban environment. And then living in a high rise higher is feeding more reason to ground and to anchor. So yeah, it's really, really important on that when you look at the science of it.
I love that because let's say you're a trader on Wall Street and you're in one of those high rise and you live in Tribeca and you're also in
Mhm.
a high rise. Well, you're going to spend most of your working life and living life sleeping, drinking, eating, working in a high rise. So you'll be really disconnected to the earth, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that is something. So this disconnection from the earth that you're talking about, which I love that you brought up this topic, 'cause I love talking about it, but it's not even perceivable. Like we can't perceive that we've had too many EMFs in a sense. Like we can't tangibly say, oh, right, my indicator is here, let me ground and bring it back down. We essentially reestablish our baseline of what we perceive as normal as something that is actually abnormal. And this is really important for stress and stuff like that as well. I found that when I left New York City and I moved to Arizona, this was 4 years ago, that I didn't realize the level of noise, pollution, radio frequency, like just everything of what the city is. The city is one big EMF, essentially. That I was just like, oh my goodness, right? And it took a little bit to calibrate. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it is more needed in urban environments.
I love the thought of you walking through New York with one sandal. I just love it. I can't get this out of my mind now, Dr. Emily. Like every time I'm going through New York, I'm just going to take my shoe off, one of it, and I'm just going to send you a selfie.
Please do. Please do. Oh my gosh.
Let's be honest, there are much crazier things going on in New York City,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. No one even noticed. They were just like, what? That is nothing.
I love it. I love it. Now, another topic that I would like to demystify and know whether this is true, whether this is a myth. I've been told my whole life I've got flat feet. I've got flat feet. Every time I go to see a podiatrist, I'm told I've got flat feet. When I do any running and I go into a runner's shop, I'm told I need flat feet running shoes and all the rest of it. And I have to say that I do notice a huge difference when I have shoes for flat feet, but at the same times, I feel like it makes my knees a little bit lazier, if that makes sense. And sometimes I actually like not wearing flat feet specific running shoes because I feel like I actually get less injured or less just sensitivities. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts. A, is that a thing? Can you really have flat feet? B, are you sort of receiving a life sentence? If you have a flat feet, you should always wear flat feet running shoes, for example. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, great question as well. As far as foot type, but specifically around flat feet, because it's the one that's most spoken about. And you could think of flat feet as overpronation is another word for it. So people might say, oh, I'm overpronating, I have overpronated feet. So when I talk about flat feet slash overpronation, dropped arches, falling arches, that type, is I always categorize them and I start to classify them a little bit differently. So there are two main initial types of flat feet. First one is going to be flexible. A flexible flat foot is one that when you're sitting in a chair and you bring your legs straight out and you look at your foot, do you see an arch? So this means non-weight bearing, no gravity, no body weight. Look at your foot, just sitting on the bed or in the chair. Do you have an arch? Okay. If you have an arch and then you stand up and you introduce gravity and body weight and boom, your arch falls. That's a very specific foot type that we would then approach in a specific way, which I'll talk about. The other one is considered rigid. Now, a rigid flat foot is one that when you're sitting in a chair, you're on a bed, your foot is extended out. That foot is flat from across the room, you can tell it's flat, right? So which means obviously if you're sitting no body weight, no arch, you stand up, you're obviously not going to have an arch, right? So that's a rigid flat foot, different approach. Let's talk about the flexible because that's the most common, right? Or the one that probably a majority of the listeners would say, yeah, no, I do have an arch. And then what's happening when I stand up? There's two main types that fall under that. The first one is ligament laxity. This is something in the connective tissue that is too rubber bandy, almost like hypermobile, right? When people are like double jointed, is there's not enough integrity or strength in the ligaments to hold that foot up, the posture and the arch of the foot up. So you just essentially bottom out or you blow through, you lengthen those ligaments. That's one type. The other type would be muscle weakness. This means this is where people can say, oh, you don't need orthotics. You need to just strengthen your foot. Your foot is weak. You need to strengthen your core. You need to strengthen your glutes. Those are two different types. Okay. Now, and then there's obviously variations and extremes within that. For people who have the ligament laxity, typically I will see this in the middle of the foot. So the midfoot will drop. Those that have muscle weakness, I will see this more in the back of the foot. I will give typically orthotics and arch supports to the ligament lax because even if you strengthen your foot until you turn purple, you will never be able to lift and counter ligament laxity with muscle strength. It just doesn't work that way. That would be more an orthotic. The one that's more muscle weakness, I'm giving that person foot strengthening, core strengthening, foot to core, all of that. Okay, so that's the most common. Really, really quick, I will tell you about the rigid. Rigid, that arch is not moving. So I still do foot strengthening. I still do foot stimulation because you still have to be tuned into your foot, even if it's a rigid pancake. You still have to feel your feet and be able to articulate even your digits, even if the arch isn't lifting. We still have to be alive in our foot. So that's kind of a high level of how I start to think about flat feet and really want to introduce the idea to the listeners so then they can kind of realize it's not just, ABC, you have a flat foot, you have a neutral foot, or you have a high arch and that's it. No, there's actually hundreds of foot types that you could kind of get into the weeds of.
That's fascinating. And is there a foot type that shouldn't be wearing barefoot shoes? Because you said that earlier on that some foot type are just not really suitable for barefoot wear. Please tell me it's not me. but I'm ready to hear it if it is.
I know you have a flat foot, but I actually don't know which of the types we started talking about that you have. So you might be good. You might be good. But with the barefoot shoes or minimal shoes, if you have the ligament laxity, and now just having a ligament lax flat foot is not reason to be completely scared of them, because then the next question I have on this when I recommend shoes is, do you have any sort of injury history? Do you have a history of Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, stress fractures, right? Because then that kind of guides me in the shoes I recommend to people. And then the third, which is extremely important as well, is what is the activity or the demands you're going to put your foot under? Are you trying to use the minimal shoes when you just take a strength class at the gym? Fine, even if you have a ligament lax foot, because you're doing a lot of static squats and bicep curls, right? If you're saying, no, I have a ligament lax foot and I want to run a marathon, okay, that's different, right? That's a different conversation. Or even you have a ligament lax foot and you are a nurse and you stand on your feet for 10 hours a day. One, I would not put any nurse in a minimal shoe for 10 hours a day. I don't care what the foot type is. That's not what we want to do. So it's really about making sure that we take footwear and understanding of our foot type and then all of the demands that we're going to put our foot under, and realize that we really need multiple pairs of shoes and say, these are for that, these are for this, these are for my special nights out, other nights I do this, right? And you kind of break it up, knowing the appropriateness of the footwear for your foot type.
Okay, and when it comes to running, because I'm a runner, but I'm a runner who's currently nursing a stress fracture, so not very fun. TBS stress fracture, not fun, not fun at all. I have learned, well, I think I am learning some of the mistakes I may or may not have made in terms of my footwear choice the hard way. What
Yes.
are your thoughts around running shoes, brand or no brand? My question is more around, when you go to a specialist runner shop, they would really want to put you on the machine and put you into this pigeonhole of you can only wear that brand and that type of running shoes or you will die. It's that extreme sometimes. What are your thoughts? Is there truth in there, or should we add more nuances and subtleties?
So I would for sure add some more nuances to that, because they're going to be bucketing people really into the three that I had said. Do you have overpronation would be one. Overpronation, which is a flat foot, a falling arch, maybe it's ligament laxity, maybe it's muscle strength, but it's a foot that's rolling inward.
Yes.
That foot typically, just so the listeners understand that, typically is one that is a little bit slower to stabilize, maybe a little weaker, if you want to use that word. I don't want to get too wrapped in that. It gets tired easier. So you are going to fatigue the foot faster. So now we're running a 5K, a 10K, you're pushing because you're training for a marathon, whatever it is, and you have a flat foot overpronated, it's going to get tired easier, which means you are now susceptible for stress fractures, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, etc. Right? So is there an advantage to putting that foot type in a quote unquote motion controlled shoe with an arch support or a custom orthotic? Sure. There's more options than just custom orthotic motion controlled shoe. You can kind of deviate a little bit, but yes, there's validity for that. Let's say you're at the running shoe store and they show you have the other extreme. You have a higher arch, often referred to as oversupination, stiffer foot. This is a foot that doesn't, the term is unlock. So in order to absorb energy and impact from the ground, you have to be able to unlock your foot. You have to make it almost like when your leg is extended, your knee is locked, you bend your knee is unlocked, right? So you need to just soften the foot. A oversupinated foot has a hard time softening for the ground and for impact. It is a foot that's really good for speed because we become quick when we supinate. So just there's positive and negatives to everything. But a oversupinated high arch foot, according to the running shoe store, would say, I need you to have a shock absorbing shoe. Shock absorption is cushion. So they're trying to damp or take away some of the impact so that the foot that is more rigid, that cannot soften to the ground, the shoe will do the work. And that's what you do, right? That's making it very too simplistic, and that's not how it is, right? So on there, just so that the listeners can kind of understand a little bit, is you could have some running shoes that are maybe for shorter distances. I'm honestly telling people to buy a lot of shoes here. I'm sorry.
I love it.
Sorry for your budget, but you would have a shoe that is maybe for shorter distances. For this, you could do something like a transitional shoe, like an Ultra. An Ultra is a very good middle of the road shoe. On running, middle of the road shoe, right? So these are some that you could look at. If your arch is still falling some and you need a little bit more quote unquote control, you don't have to get a custom orthotic. You could use what is called a scaphoid pad. I thought I had one in here. A scaphoid pad or an LA pad. It's a pad that just goes onto the insole on the inside and it's going to lift the arch. It's just a felt pad. You could do that, right? So there's ways to add some features to your footwear that are not just an orthotic or an arch support. There's different foot pads, and I do this all the time for patients, and I love to do it. For the higher arch over supinated, it's really about focusing on mobility. So it would be getting into and understanding how to release the foot, the ankles, the hips, the T-spine, and you want to do that consistently to just teach that foot to relax a little bit.
I love it. Super useful. I think that folks that find it hard to relax in general are going to find it hard to relax their feet.
True. True.
I'm just thinking about my typical type A, super, super, super burnt out, super stressed out, overbooked, overstressed, stretched out professional. I don't know that they have relaxed feet, Dr. Emily.
I hear you, which is why I tell people, you know what, because like I'm a type A also, so I'm very high strung.
Oh, I would never have guessed that.
Very high strung, and I have high arches, so yes, I follow your thing. Is if you could release your feet, right? So the muscles in the bottom of the feet when you brush your teeth. So I am a multitasker, right? If we could do these little things and we stack them with other aspects, right? So could you stretch your calves when you're waiting for your coffee to be made? I don't know. Like, how do you do it in a way that you're doing two things at the same time, and you're going to brush your teeth anyway, so you might as well release your feet at the same time. I'm sure most of them are having coffee or tea or something. Could you stretch your calves at the same time? Like, how do we stack it in a way that is really, really easy and achievable based off of our unique lifestyles and just, the pressure of what we want to achieve? I totally get it.
And Dr. Emily, just a blunt question here. I've learned through injuries, etc., how important feet health is. But if somebody is listening thinking, why should I care? What is the connection between how stressed out you are and your feet health and the sort of negative loop that you can enter upon, and how bad can it get? Can you just tell us why we should care? If no one's had an injury yet, if somebody's listening and thinking, I have much bigger problem in my life, feet is not one of them. Why should they think differently?
Honestly, I would take a nervous system approach, and everything about being able to handle the stresses of the day, the deadlines, the team members, the traveling, all of that is you will be more resilient, bulletproof, whatever words you want to use for it, if your nervous system is regulated. So everything is about bringing your nervous system back to a baseline, recalibrate. Your feet have thousands of nerves in the bottom of them, and they are a very easy, powerful way to recalibrate your nervous system is by just stimulating your feet, releasing the feet, massaging the feet. If people do not believe me, go get a foot massage, reflexology, a foot massage, go to Chinatown and they have the traditional foot massage. You will fall asleep. It is impossible. I've not been able to, I don't know if you agree with me, if you go and you get the $20 foot massages, right? I literally will start on my computer, and then all of a sudden I'm just like passing out. There's something so powerful
Totally.
regulating about releasing the feet and getting them stimulated. That is so what your nervous system needs. And then you'll come back even more focused, resilient, right? Just ready to conquer your day from that.
Absolutely. Now, can I ask you one last question that is not sexy, like not sexy at all? Two recurring things that I hear from client. One is bunion, and the other one, also not particularly sexy, verruca and warts, and particularly the fact that sometimes we think they're for kiddies, and actually many of us as adults struggle with them. I've had them and often have them come back when super stressed and burnt out. That's why it's something that comes up a lot in my world, because I work with high stress, high anxiety. I know those are two separate questions, but could you shed a little light on those two really unsexy topics for us, please?
Yes. So we will start with bunions and then we'll end with the plantar warts. I think that'll be fun.
Okay. Lovely, lovely. If everybody
So,
is having breakfast right now, you may
I
want to
know,
pause
I know.
that.
Exactly. So with the bunions, there is a high association of bunions, which is a deviation of the big toe, and a bunion is the bump prominence that you will find on the inside of the big toe. There is a high prevalence between bunions and flat feet or unstable feet, especially ligament lax. So ligament lax feet, they've just lost the stability of where a bunion actually forms. A bunion forms actually in your midfoot. It's not at the big toe. So I often tell people that a bunion is not a big toe issue. It is a midfoot issue. And it's a lack of stability that's allowing the metatarsal to swing out. And then that creates that bump or that bunion. Bunions are progressive. Bunions get worse with every step that you're taking, not to sound like a Debbie Downer, but they are progressive. So I'm a huge advocate of toe spacers. There's a product called a bunion booty, and it's a little kind of sock thing that pulls the toe out. These are great to wear when you are walking around. Obviously, if you are in high heels, you cannot use them. But if you could use a little toe spacer in your shoe, even between the first and the second, it's just supporting the joint alignment. I do a lot of consultations for patients who really want to understand, is surgery the best approach? I was trained as a surgeon. I did bunion surgery for 5 years out of residency, and then I don't do surgery anymore. I do more of a second opinion to explain to the patient why surgery may make sense. And there is a time and place for surgery for a bunion, which I go over with patients. So just understanding that as far as bunions, you cannot reverse a bunion without surgery. I wish you could, because I would totally be all over that, but you can't. So that's the bunion side of things. As far as verruca or plantar warts, so plantar warts are actually the HPV virus. So think of where you get other warts from like an STD perspective, right? So similar as far as the virus. And the way that viruses actually work within the system is that they actually hold on to the nerves a little bit. So you may have it kind of keep reappearing, right? And there is a genetic predisposition to HPV viruses and plantar warts, which is why in certain patients, you think you resolve the wart and then high stress, and it's like it starts coming back, right? And that's because certain viruses stay dormant within the nervous system, and the individuals who are uniquely susceptible to that have a genetic predisposition to that. So just know that. And I think some of that is then once we understand that, we can anticipate that if we have a high stress and we start to see, little creeping up, just know it's kind of par for the course. Let's address it. Let's calm it down. It's a reminder that we need to check our nervous system, our stress, so that things like this stay down. But yeah, I've seen it with patients. It's not just something for children. Actually, I've seen most of the verruca patients that I've treated in my career have been adults and actually not children. Children can get it, but just know that, right? Plantar warts like wet environments. So if you've never had a plantar wart and you never want a plantar wart, then definitely do not take public showers and, all of that. I often joke. So I was in the fitness industry for 20 years in New York City, and I would just be in gym, shower. And I mean, it's disgusting, but I would just be barefoot, which is disgusting. But I would just like in and out, and knock on wood, I never got anything in 20 years. So I'm just like, okay. So again, that to me, that's demonstrating kind of this genetic predisposition for it and not, right? So, and if you have it, and you keep having them recurring, I mean, it is what it is, right? We all have I have other things that you don't really need to care about as far as like my genetic predisposition for it. But yeah, it is what it is as far as the plantar warts.
And I really love that you said that, because it's exactly what I see in my clients
Mhm.
is they almost like flare up. I don't know if that's the right word to
Yeah.
use, but they sort an outbreak almost during the heightened anxiety, the heightened stress period. And they can be quite debilitating because they can be very painful too, right?
Yeah.
And not particularly nice to talk about either. Is there any quick tip you would give to our listener that are seeing themselves go through those periods? Any holistic hacks that they could experiment with, or do they have to go and what would you say?
Yeah, so I would say one, definitely try to keep so every verruca, and for any of the listeners that have it, I'm sorry if this is so gross to anyone else, but every verruca has like, I call it like the mom. I've seen some
Mhm.
really bad cases of verruca where patients are clearly touching it and then it's spreading. They're just like, I don't even know. It's like it can spread to your face, to your hands, so you do not want to be touching the verruca on the foot. But you will know that there's always like a spot, and it's where it's the mom. And then you can have little offshoots. When you calm it all down, if you do get a recurrent flare up, it's typically where the mom was sitting, right? That's kind of where the virus is sitting dormant. So definitely do not touch it. Um, you can do over the counter kind of salicylic acid ones if you would like. You do want to make sure you keep it clean and dry. There's an art to the moisture balance of verrucas. So I'm not a big fan of putting a band-aid on it and leaving that band-aid all day, every day, because it gets really, really wet. And then it actually kind of perpetuates the issue. So it's a little bit about targeting it, cover at night, put the medicine on at night, do not touch it, take it off in the morning, keep it dry, things like that. Very difficult to surgically remove them, because if you surgically cut them out, you now have a scar or an incision on the bottom of the foot. And scars and incisions on the bottom of the foot can be very painful, just because the skin is very unique. The skin is different than any other skin. The palm of the hand and the bottom of the foot is just very, very unique to how it responds to incisions on it. So I wouldn't recommend trying to go that route right away. But there's some other methods on how you could do it, burning them, freezing them, and things like that. But all about the moisture balance and keep the mama happy. Keep the mama
And keep your stress
happy.
level down. Easy thing to do,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes. And
nobody's
totally,
stressed.
totally balance your stress level. Yes. Go earth.
Go Earth.
Go earth on the beach. Take a vacation and release your feet when you brush your teeth. Obviously, meditate, do all the other stuff. But yes.
That's that to me, that's the essence of today's podcast is if you get more relaxed, you'll have relaxed feet. If you're super stressed out, you'll have stressed out feet. So it's all about that.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. Dr. Emily, I've learned so much. I just want to know, how can our listener connect with you? How can they get their lovely feet checked by you? I know you live in Arizona. Not all of our listeners do. Can they see you virtually? How would you like them to get into your world?
Yes, absolutely. So my podiatry practice website is thefunctionalfootdoc.com. So there. And I see patients in person, yes, in Arizona, but most of my patients are actually virtual. So far, far majority of my patients, probably 90% are virtual. They're also from all different countries. I see patients all around the world. So just note that. I see patients over an hour. So I'm out of insurances, obviously, as people are not just local. I'm not under insurances, but I spend an hour with a patient and I go really in depth in what their presentation is, my assessment, my evaluation, and then I create a really thorough, personalized program for that individual. And a lot of it's based off of educating so that the patient walks away, no pun intended, walks away with
Oh,
a lot of knowledge. Don't know where that came from.
that was cute. That was so cute.
A lot of knowledge of their own body and their feet. So I'm very much into educating and empowering the patient. So there's that. My Instagram handles, if people want to follow, I have a lot of content on there that's educational based. Dr. Emily DPM. I have a YouTube channel. I have a blog. My newest book is called Sensory Sapiens. Everything is about really the sensory side of longevity, not just feet, but just system wide. My big focus is sensory, and yes, a connection to your feet optimizes mood, memory, and movement. So those are the three kind of pillars that I look at. And then any of the Naboso products and things like that, that is Naboso, Naboso.com. And then the socks, yes. And then on Instagram, Naboso_technology. So yeah.
I am going to add all the links to all these terrific products, and I am so grateful for our conversation today. I'm actually going to go ahead and book a 1 hour with you because I have so many more questions, and honestly, I think I need a whole hour just to talk about my feet. I was trying my best not to be too selfish today. I was like, oh, I can't just ask you me questions. I need to share your knowledge with the world, but I think I want 1 hour just for me.
I love it. I love it. I would happy to see your feet.
I can't wait. I don't know if you'd be that happy. I have prettier parts, I promise you. It's not my
I
best.
have seen it all. I've seen it all.
It's not my best feature, I would say, but I'm so grateful for them. So, Dr. Emily, this was delightful. Thank you so much for teaching us so much, and I can't wait to meet you for one-to-one very soon.